What's going on, you guys? It's your boy Joe Castro, aka Philly Fresco, and it is Philly the podcast.
You want Philly?
Yeah, let's do it.
Today we have a very special guest, man. We have the man of the X's and O's himself. We got my guy Fran Duffy. Fran, how's it going, brother?
Joe, it's great to be with you. Thanks so much for having me again.
Definitely. Always my pleasure. Like I said before, man, love having you on the show. Now I know you have, you're gonna have a little bit of free time today, so I don't want to hold you up, man. I want you to enjoy that free time. But I do want to talk about these Eagles, right? So before we get into Monday, I do want to, look forward a little bit, but I do want to circle back a little bit. Obviously, the Eagles get their first win. That's huge against the Lions. A little bit of a tale of two halves. But I want to ask you. I know you were able to go over the all 22 and everything. Did you learn anything about these Eagles that may have surprised you on Sunday?
I don't think we learned too much on offense other than this team is who we hoped they would be on offense, right? You've got that run game element still there, still very effective, still very versatile, right? You have the stat that I've been using really since the post-game show with Gabriella DiGiovanni and Ike Reese on Sunday night. Obviously, we know four guys reached the end zone on the ground, right? The first time since, I think it's 1976 since that has happened for a team, which is insane. Four guys reached the end zone on the ground. Three of them average 4 yards a carry. Two of them go 90 plus. So I think when you look at just the way that this team can beat you on the ground, there are a number of ways that they can do that. And then you look at the pass game. I think if you were hoping to see stardom from A.J. Brown, you got stardom from A.J. Brown here in week one. We know what Dallas Goedert can do. We know what Devontae Smith could do. But one of the big questions was, how is A.J. Brown going to fit into this offense? Is he going to be used in the same ways as he was in Tennessee, or is it going to allow him to be productive? Well, any questions you had were answered from that standpoint. I think defensively, look, there are definitely things that can be cleaned up from a tackling standpoint. But outside of that, this is a team that did a lot of the same things we saw a year ago. They just did it with the influx of talent. When you look at all the additions this team made on that side of the football, we got to see all of them kind of dip their toe into the water in this scheme. And so I'm excited to watch that group continue to evolve as well.
Yeah, and definitely. And I've been saying kind of as a joke, but it's really true, to be honest. I feel like these type of games are guilty pleasures for coaches. You obviously get out of here with the win, and that's beautiful, but you have so many teachable moments, right? You have so much film that you can kind of go back on and just self-scout. So in your opinion, how improved do you think this team will be from that experience, from being able to kind of look at what went right and what went wrong all in kind of 1 week and just be able to fix those things? How much improvement do you expect from these Eagles?
Well, I think the big thing is, you can't necessarily every season or every week in the NFL season is its own season, right? And so we know that sometimes seasons can go like this. So I don't know that if they win or lose on Monday night, that it's a direct reflection of, did they learn the lessons that were served them in Detroit? But I think ultimately what you're hoping for, and you know this from following from the NFL for so long, is that the first half of the year, if you are a team that is going to be in the postseason, if you're a team that is going to be hunting for a Super Bowl, for a division title, you are hoping that in the first half, you collect as many wins as possible. It doesn't matter how they come. You just don't want to start behind the 8 ball. When you look at the team that won the Super Bowl in 2017, you look through that midseason stretch where it was just win after win after win after win after win. A bunch of them were just decisive victories, right? But some of them were kind of sloppy victories, right? And I kind of reflect back on when I worked at Temple. When I worked at Temple football, I worked there back in like 2006 to 2010. And, we especially early on, we didn't win a ton of games, but when the ones we did win, it was like, all right, we'd be in the locker room and I'd be talking with some of our coaches and they would say, it sure feels beating like crap or feeling like crap on Sunday, right? And that's the thing is, like, you will take a sloppy win over a sloppy loss any day of the week. So if you're the coaches, this is a little bit of a guilty pleasure in that you get to really coach your team hard and you have a lot to fix, a lot to correct, but also you got that W at the end of the day. And so I think the big thing for this team, continue to stack as many wins as possible. The chances you're going to go 8-0 to start the season are slim. So you want to be able to try and collect as many as possible, then put yourself in position that you're playing your best football down the stretch in the second half.
Definitely. And it was, like I said, it was kind of a tale of two halves. You saw what this team can realistically be. And it's exciting, right? A lot of Eagles fans are excited. One person I know a lot of Eagles fans are excited about, and a lot of national media is starting to pick up on, is Jalen Hurts. Jalen Hurts had himself a game. A lot of people saying, and including me, we might not win that game without a Jalen Hurts. So In your opinion, what was your first impression? Obviously, we didn't get to see a lot of him during the preseason and training camp. What was your first impression of Jalen Hurts in the game?
Well, I think the big thing with Jalen is you mentioned a lot of those plays. Not every quarterback can make. You see some of those scrambles where there were some breakdowns in protection, or they just sent an extra rusher that the Eagles couldn't block up front, and he was able to make that first man miss and then create off of that. Whether it was 2nd and 5 and he would pick up 7, it was 3rd and 15, he'd get you 16. 3rd and 7, he'd pick up 8. And not every quarterback in the NFL can do that. I think when you look at Jalen Hurts, he did a good job of understanding pre-snap where his matchups were. Some of the things from a protection standpoint that can continue to get corrected and fixed moving forward. And again, that just like what we said on the defensive side of the football, those things will mount. Those things will continue to get better over the course of a season. So to me, looking at Jalen, really good start. We got that little taste back in week 1 of the preseason, 6 for 6, 80 yards and a touchdown against the Jets. And then that was that. The book was shut on the rest of the preseason for Jalen. So just this first taste, this first test for him in year 2 of a system was, I think he passed. He passed that first test. So excited to see here in week 2 against a very tough Minnesota defense. What does he look like under the lights on Monday Night Football?
Yeah, and you bring up Minnesota. I want to kind of switch gears, talk about the next game. We're 1-0. We're going into Minnesota. Obviously, you said they have a very good defense. They have a very potent offense as well. So, in your opinion, what do the Philadelphia Eagles defense has to do, or can they do? I mean, they do have a crazy offense. What can they do to stop or just mitigate maybe the damage that this offense can do to us?
Well, I think the big thing, number one, is when you go back and you look at a lot of the big plays that Minnesota was able to get against Green Bay, a lot of those did come on some coverage busts, right? So when you look at communication in the secondary, that's going to be paramount. And they play a similar defensive scheme. It's a similar defensive philosophy here in Philadelphia as what you see out in Green Bay, which a lot of people bill as one of the best defenses in the league coming into the season. You want to make sure that all of the communication on the back end, everything's buttoned up from that standpoint. That's number one. Number two, you have to win some of those matchups up front. I think, look, Minnesota's offensive line, it used to be a huge weakness, a huge Achilles heel. I would not say that it's a huge weakness for this team at this point. That said, it's also not as strong as the group the Eagles saw a week ago. So you want to be able to win some of those matchups up front. If Kirk Cousins is going to hold on to the football and wait for some of those downfield routes to open up, well, the Eagles' defensive line has to make them pay for that. And so I think when you will look at trying to win some of those matchups up front, that's a big one, number one. You've got a rookie right guard, and Ed Ingram, who was a second-round pick coming out of LSU. He's starting at right guard. Garrett Bradbury at center, another matchup that people might be able to think you could try and get some wins there at center. He's had some struggles in the past with some bigger, stronger, more powerful defensive tackles. So we'll see if the Eagles are able to leverage those mismatches there on the interior. If you're able to do that, I think that can kind of throw Kirk Cousins off his rhythm. But it's not just the pass game, as you know, that run game. Dalvin Cook, I feel like that's the one thing we haven't talked enough about here this week. Oh yeah, like they also have one of the most explosive running backs in the NFL. And so I think when you look at Dalvin Cook, traditionally he has been more of a zone runner. The Kubiaks have been the offensive coordinator out there for the last few years, so it's been a lot of inside zone, outside zone. Last week they ran as much gap scheme as anybody. So it was power football, pulling guards. They were working in the fullback, C.J. Ham. Remember, Kevin O'Connell, he came from Sean McVay with the Rams the last few years, and they were more 11 personnel, 3 receivers, spread formations than anybody. But before that, I mean, he like McVay, he worked with Kyle Shanahan, and Shanahan loves using those base personnel sets. He loves using 2 tight ends and a fullback and mixing things up, and that's more of what we saw here with Minnesota in week 1 against Green Bay. Now, we don't know if that's exactly how they're going to play here in this game, but if the Minnesota Vikings want to come out and they want to play with base personnel on offense, all right, well, how do the Eagles respond? Do we see more of those base defensive sets with 5 defensive linemen? You're kind of working some of those matchups against what Minnesota is putting out on the table. So that'll be one of the things I'm most interested to see early. How does Minnesota want to play offensively? And then how do the Eagles match that? And inside of those personnel groupings, what are the matchups to win? That's a big one that I'll be watching early in this game.
Yeah, I think this is going to answer a lot of questions, especially, for our defense. I think our defense can, silent a lot of people that were a little bit worried about the Lions game, and just show us what we are waiting for, because we know we have a very good defense, and I think we're just kind of waiting for everything to click. Now, the next question I want to ask, I'm hoping I might have to mute this, just in case Vikings fans are watching, or Vikings, coaches or whatever. But if you're, scouting the enemy, you're looking at our offense, how do you think is the best way for, or how do you think they will try to attack our offense and stop our offense? Like you said, we have that star power of AJ Brown. We were able to really take advantage of him. And then you got some guys waiting in the wing that can do some damage as well. But how do you think the Vikings try to attack this offense this week?
Well, Joe, it's funny you asked that, because just yesterday on Thursday, just dropped the latest edition of the Eagle Eye in the Sky podcast. And in that episode, I actually talked with not one, but two opposing beat writers and analysts for the Minnesota Vikings, and just kind of got a sense of, all right, what are they worried about? What are the Vikings talking about in Minnesota right now in terms of this matchup? Both guys, to a man, both said, hey, they're worried about Jalen Hurts and the run game. But again, what does that mean? Because I think when you look at the way Minnesota played against Green Bay, one of the big things that coming out of that one was, Aaron Rodgers, there were plenty of run lanes for him that if he had chosen to take off, he would have picked up big yardage. And Aaron Rodgers even said so in postgame. He's like, yeah, I wish I kind of took off a little bit more. If they play that way against Jalen Hurts, that's not going to go well. So they're not going to play that way against Jalen Hurts. So the question is, where is that attention that they're going to pay to Jalen? Where's it going to come from? Because if you look at the way that they played in the back end, they played more off coverage than anybody. They averaged like 7.5 yards of cushion in the secondary. Their safeties played deeper than anybody, according to Next Gen Stats a week ago. So I think when you look at, all right, this is how they played super soft in the back end, and they were very aggressive with their fronts. They played a lot of 5- and 6-man fronts. They put Jordan Hicks and Eric Kendricks right up on the line of scrimmage and dropped everybody out. They only blitzed like 4 times in the game. So that's going to be the question is, where are those resources going to come from to try and, for lack of a better word, to spy Jalen Hurts? It might not even be a true spy, but to just have extra bodies at that second level to try and mirror him if he's going to take off and scramble. So, there's one side of it where you're like, all right, well, maybe we see more 3 safety looks from Minnesota. Remember, they spent a first-round pick on Lewis Seen out of Georgia. He missed this past week due to injury, but it looks like he's on track to play on Monday night. They really like Cameron Bynum, their other starting safety, and then obviously you have Harrison Smith back there. So I think we might see some more 3 safety looks, try and see if we can get a little bit extra speed on the field to try and match Jalen Hurts, or maybe they back off on some of those plays where you've got Hicks and Kendricks up on the line of scrimmage. Give them just a little bit more breathing room and get them back on the second level, but that just takes away some of the teeth to your pass rush, right? And so, again, fascinated to see how Minnesota tries to do this, because my gut says they're not going to do exactly what they did last week against Green Bay. I don't think that will be the exact game plan. Just like what we were saying with the offensive side, week 1, that's all it is. It's a 1-game sample, and it goes for both teams in this matchup. I'm fascinated to see how Minnesota reacts here on Monday night.
Yeah, and you even look at our week 1 matchup against the Lions. I was kind of surprised how much they forced Jalen Hurts to run. I mean, a lot of people, comment on his arm, comment on his ability to read the field. You would think they would kind of try and make him do that. I wasn't mad about it. Obviously, allowed him to make some really, really big plays for us. But something that also surprised me is the Eagles attacked the middle of the field more than I've seen probably, in the Nick Sirianni era at least. Do you think this is obviously with the addition of AJ Brown, but you also got guys like Dallas Goedert, who's not afraid to take a hit, guys that are willing to go over the middle of the field. Do you think this is something we'll see again against the Vikings? Is this going to kind of be our calling card now that we have the personnel to do so?
Well, even going back to your first point, I was also shocked at how much Detroit played man coverage on third down, because especially after Jalen burned them so often in the first half, they didn't really convert to playing more zone on third down until late in the game. And so Minnesota, they played more zone coverage than man coverage. And so again, that's just another wrinkle here in terms of just having more eyes on Jalen Hurts throughout the course of the down. So I think that'll be a big thing to watch. But to your point about the middle of the field, I think part of that is an AJ Brown. I think part of that too is just Jalen's added comfort in this scheme, right? And I think that when you're new to a system, you're going to rely on what makes you feel most comfortable. And then as you become more comfortable in the structure of an offense, well, now more things become open to you. It's just like, I always make the analogy to like driving a car. It's like, all right, well, when you're first in there, all right, you've got your hands at 2 and 10, and you are living in safety. You are going to do exactly what you've been trained to do, and you're only going to do that. And as you get more comfortable, well, now maybe you'll drive in the left lane a little bit more. Now maybe you're fine reaching for that water bottle in the center console and taking a drink while you're driving, right? So you're able to do a little bit more. And I think as you continue to see Jalen Hurts become more comfortable, that's exactly that. You're going to see him become more comfortable accessing different parts of the field in the passing game.
Definitely. And I just spent $600 on tires, Fran. I love the reference, but talk about cars, it just gave me PTSD real quick. I love it. But no, that's very true. You do see the comfortability, not just from Jalen, from this whole offense. I think they all understand each other and know what their jobs are. So I have a couple more questions, and we are going to get you out of here, Fran. One question I have to ask you offensively. Who are you looking at in this Minnesota game that you're saying if this guy can come up big for us, the Eagles can probably walk away with a win on Monday night?
I will say, I mean, I think the easy answer is Jalen, right? I think that's the big one, is to say, okay, Jalen comes through with a big game that makes you feel good about the Eagles' chances, and that's going to be the case every single week. It's tough because when you look at both Minnesota's defense and Minnesota's offense, they move pieces around. And so even looking, Danielle Hunter versus Lane Johnson, Zadarius Smith versus Jordan Mailata. Well, they moved Hunter and Zadarius Smith all up and down the line of scrimmage. They're standing them up. They're doing all kinds of wacky stuff with those guys. So I wouldn't even say, if Lane Johnson always wins his matchups against Hunter, well, Hunter's going to get some reps against guards. He's going to get his reps against tight ends, and same thing with Zadarius Smith. So that's a tough one to say. So I think I will just answer with the low-hanging fruit of Jalen. But I also expect that when you look around at this passing game, I am fascinated to see, again, kind of going back to that Minnesota secondary. First play of the game, Christian Watson, rookie second-round pick. I was really high on Christian Watson coming out of North Dakota State because of that height, weight, speed combination. I mean, you don't see a lot of guys that are 6'3" that run the way that he does. But look, the one big knock was drops, which is fine. You can live with that. That's why he goes in the second round and not in the first. But first play of the game, he toasts Patrick Peterson, runs right by him in off coverage, and he is wide open and lets a ball go right through his hands. I think with what we have seen and what we know of both A.J. Brown and certainly of Devontae Smith, you throw Quez Watkins in there as well, those opportunities aren't going to be squandered to that level. So I think when you look at the Eagles, they'll have some chances, I think, downfield in this game if Minnesota decides they want to play the same way in terms of playing soft off coverage. So that would be a big one to watch as well, as the receivers winning those one-on-ones on the perimeter against that Minnesota secondary.
Definitely. So just let Quez run. Just let Quez run and see what happens. That's what I'm hearing. I love it. And then defensively, I want to ask the same question. Is there someone on the defense that you're looking at that needs to have a big game for the Eagles to win on Monday?
Producing Eagles game plan this week, sometimes we'll throw in a segment where we ask Mike Quick and Ike Reese to kind of just say, all right, what's a one-on-one matchup that you're excited to see? Exactly what you're asking me now. And as Ben Fennell and I were kind of coming through, all right, what matchups do we want to talk about? At the end of the day, we're like, it's not a one-on-one matchup, but you got to stop Justin Jefferson. You can't let what happened last week against the Packers happen again at Lincoln Financial Field on Monday night. But again, the problem is that's not a one-on-one matchup because they do a really good job of moving him all around. He'll play inside, he'll play outside. He lined up twice in the backfield on Sunday against Green Bay. They threw him a swing pass out of the backfield, and so they're going to be really creative with finding ways to get him into space. And so James Bradbury, Darius Slay, Avonte Maddox. You're going to have the chances for linebackers to reroute him off the ball. Your safeties are going to be involved. Everybody has just got to make sure that things are buttoned up from a communication standpoint, from an assignment standpoint. We talked about the comfort and the scheme for Jalen Hurts, year 2 of this offense. Well, a lot of those guys, it's year 2 on defense. Making sure that you understand where your bread is buttered on that side of the football. Understand where what everybody is doing within the construct of any given play call. Don't let Justin Jefferson beat you. I think that's going to be a big one here, obviously, in this game.
Yeah, Justin Jefferson's going to be the guy I think everybody has their eyes on, and just how we're going to actually handle that. I remember I want to say it was 2 years ago that we played the Steelers, and we had one of our linebackers on Chase Claypool, and everybody still remembers that. So I do, obviously. So hopefully that doesn't happen this year, a big situation. But
that's
now, go ahead. I'm
happened
sorry.
Green Bay a few times. Justin Jefferson was matched up on a linebacker in space because what you'll see is Minnesota likes to go with these empty sets, Joe. And when you go empty, especially out of those base personnel sets, so if you've got two tight ends in the field, or if you've got two backs on the field, and then you go empty, and you put a play, some teams will say, all right, well, we have to respond. We have to play in zone. We have to play cover 2. We're going to play cover 3. Well, if you've got Justin Jefferson in the slot, that means that you're going to get some matchups against a linebacker, or sometimes against a safety. We've seen the Eagles do that this summer with Devontae Smith in camp as well, and that's one of the benefits of going empty. And so there might be situations where you see like a Kaiser White literally lined up across from Justin Jefferson, and that's what I meant in terms of it being a full team effort. That's going to happen in this game. Those are going to, but you can't let that be an X play in the passing game. You've got to make sure that if that happens, all right, everybody does their job. You get through it without giving up the big play.
It's going to be interesting. It's going to be tough. Justin Jefferson is no easy cover. He's no easy stop. And they have other players out there as well. Adam Thielen, they have a great, like you said, Aaron, I just spaced on his name, but either way, they have a great running back, great team, great offense.
Cook, yep.
So there we go, Dalvin Cook. I don't know why I wanted to say Aaron Jones so much because we're talking about Green Bay as well. But they have a great team. So it's going to be a very fun game, I believe. Now I want to ask you one last question, and for this one, I'm gonna ask you to take off the analytic hat, take off the, we're just going to talk about this as fans. How excited are you realistically for this Monday night game? I think this can prove a lot for this Eagles team. I'm very excited about this game because I think a lot of people are kind of doubting us, whereas with the Lions game, people really thought we would just, kind of blow them out the water. This one can really prove that I feel we are what we think we are. How excited for this game are you?
I think this is a big litmus test, and I think when you look at the rest of this Eagles schedule in the first half and you see, Dak Prescott's injured against Dallas, Washington, they're not going to have Chase Young or Brian Robinson. You look around and you're like, all right, well, some of these other teams, they're not going to be as proven as what we think we've seen now from Minnesota. And you look at the star power on both sides of the football. That doesn't mean that this is like a make or break game, and if they lose this game, the season is over. But I think when you look at it, it's like, all right, like this is a really good temperature check for this team on both sides of the football. A tough opening matchup at home, prime time, under the lights, national TV. Like this is a great opportunity for this team to kind of have a coming out party, because I feel like nationally everybody's excited about the Eagles. People are really impressed with what Minnesota did against Aaron Rodgers and the Packers last week as well. And so I think I almost kind of think of it, there was in 2016, the Eagles had that huge win over the Pittsburgh Steelers in week 3. In 2017, in the Super Bowl year, there was the Thursday night game against the Carolina Panthers. It was like week 6, week 7. And I remember we had, I think it was Chris Long was mic'd up or Bo Allen was mic'd up. Whichever the two was mic'd up, they were talking to each other on the sideline, and Chris Long turned to Bo Allen and was like, we're good. We're really good. And I feel like that's kind of what this game could be, is like, if you go out and you beat the Minnesota Vikings, I think everybody in that building's feeling like, all right, hey, this could be a really good team, guys. We still have to go one game at a time and take care of business on a weekly basis because it's the NFL. But I think it can be that kind of litmus test where you really kind of get a temperature of where this team is at this point early in year 2 under Nick Sirianni and this coaching staff.
Yeah, well, I'm excited. I am excited. I am hype. I am ready for Monday night. I love Monday night because it is, you're the only game. It's under the lights. It's prime time, obviously, but you got to get through Sunday first. So this will help a lot of my community, because we all love you, Fran. This will help a lot of our community just kind of get through this weekend because we don't have any Eagles football. But Monday is going to be amazing. Fran, do you have anything coming up that you want to let the people know to keep an eye on?
Yeah, for sure. I appreciate it, Joe. To me, the Eagle Eye in the Sky podcast just dropped, like I said, and that I threw an extra interview in there from a Viking standpoint just to try and get us through to Monday. I also talked with Eagles running backs coach Jamal Singleton this week on Eagles game plan. I saved a chunk of it for the podcast as well. But you want to make sure you go and find that breakdown with Coach Singleton. I've been doing these tape study segments, the film breakdowns with coaches for years now on the website. This one with Jamal Singleton, one of my single favorite ones. He was awesome. And we broke down like 3 plays from this past Sunday against Detroit, but the emotion and the intensity that he has, and then also he was willing to share just the different coaching points, run game and pass game, Miles Sanders, Gainwell, Boston Scott, across the board. We picked one play of each, and it was a really, really fun breakdown. So make sure you go find Tape Study, that whole segment. It's going to be like 10 minutes or so. Make sure you go watch that. I'm going to tweet it out as soon as it's ready here Friday afternoon. But yeah, that was a really fun one. Make sure you go check that out. Obviously, Eagles Game Plan as well when that drops on all Eagles digital channels.
Definitely, I'll be first one watching it. You know me, I love those. I need them. But no, Fran, I appreciate your time so much, man. It's always a pleasure, and I appreciate everybody tuned in. Be sure to hit that like, hit that subscribe. Definitely continue to support Eagles Entertainment because they do an amazing job, especially Fran Duffy. I'm not saying it just because you're here. Every time I tell people I got Fran coming on, they're like, "What? You got the GOAT." We love you, Fran. We really love what you're doing, and we appreciate you. So,
thank you, man. I appreciate it.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. But other than that, y'all know what it is, man. It is Fly Eagles Fly, and we are out of here. Peace.
Eagles fans everywhere. This is for you.
Fly Eagles flying on the team. Touchdown. Time to get Jalen this ring. You don't really want to start a thing. This a Bird Gang Nation, baby. It's a Philly thing. Hater, and you looking like you type trash. I'm just here calling on Philly the podcast. And we can call a man dog or watch Miles score off the handoff. Rest of the division, your man saw Jackson like Sean, hunting like Randall. Season here, early time to do him in. Your boy Philly Fresco. Thanks for tuning in.